Okay, let's start with a question. How many of us went to business school when we started up in business?
I expect there won't be a particularly large show of hands.
No, and that's because most of us decided to go into business just doing something that we love, or maybe something that we're really good at doing.
It's usually a little way down the line that we start to reflect on not actually gaining a grounding in the useful things like sales, marketing, finance and operations.
Yeah, and that's when it all starts to feel, well, a bit difficult.
I'm Nikki. I've been running businesses since 2004, and I'm the founder of the Growth Community, which is a place where businesses come to network and support each other's business success.
And I'm James, and I started my business back in 2020, helping businesses, brands and organisations to unlock the power of podcasting, basically using audio as a way to market and grow their business.
Well, in our line of work, we both meet a lot of businesses and we're constantly learning new things from being around them. Every day literally is a business school day.
So we thought, why not grab some of this good stuff and turn it into a podcast? So please take your seats. Class is about to start. Welcome back, class. Thank you for joining us today. As ever, we have a new guest to introduce to you. Please tell us who you are.
I'm Hayden from Sales Geek, and I've been a sales leader in the industry for a number of years. And what I do now is I go into SMEs and support their growth. Sometimes it's a number of different reasons, but number one tends to be growth that are going.
Tell us a little bit more about then Sales Geek and what it is that you guys do.
So what Sales Geek do, we go into businesses and provide part-time sales direct services. There's a number of different models depending on the size of the business and what their ambitions are. We also provide sales training as part of that as well. So we have full training programs that can be standard off-the-shelf stuff that can take half a day, or it can be full bespoke programs that take a number of months depending on what the needs of the business is.
And actually, that's kind of why we're here today, really, because one of the things I think for small businesses, whether they're just starting out or whether they've got a few years down the line, is that we don't realise how important it is that we actually are a salesperson, and nobody really ever goes to sales school before they do it. But as a small business, you are the salesperson, aren't you? And what's your kind of take on that? How do small businesses tend to sort of do well in sales or not?
Yeah, well, just to touch on that point, I hear it a lot that because people don't have sales in the job title or the role, and what they'll do, they'll tend to shy away from putting sales into the job title or role. There's a number of fancy words out there, but in particular when you're talking to business owners, the business is only going to grow by the business owner selling. And they are salespeople. It may not be in the title, they may not have had any experience in it, but they are salespeople. And when I go in the initial conversations we're having, what comes across quite obviously is there's a fear of selling. And that is because of the stereotype that's been about for a number of years that you've seen from the double glazing salesman, the car salesman, Del Boy, only fools and horses. So people instantly feel they need to be this type of person when they're doing it. And because of that, it causes them barriers to growth in the business because they don't take certain actions at the right time because they're worried about how it'll come across or having the confidence to go and do certain actions.
And what would you say sales actually is? Because I think we're all very comfortable with the marketing side of things. Everyone kind of thinks they know what marketing is. I don't know if everyone actually does know, but I think most people understand that the marketing is the warming up process and the trust building process of getting people to look at what you do. So what is sales and how does it kind of fit into that? Because I think that's a common misunderstanding.
Yeah, and we see that a lot in businesses that are going to, they want to grow. So the first place to go is marketing, which I understand there's massive value in marketing and getting that right. But that has to work hand in hand with sales. They've got to work together. You see it in bigger businesses where sales teams and marketing teams are separate and it causes issues. There seems to be a conflict when that should not be happening. I see sales on both sides of marketing. So initially, sales and marketing work together to fully understand the target audience, where they're going, who they're going after, building out your proposition and also where you want to go. You look at your sales revenue numbers of where you want to be in 3 years and then you build that back through your pipeline, a number of different ways of doing it. But then the marketing, then through that message, the sales and marketing team are pulled together. They go out and generate that interest, as you say, the awareness, getting people interested, understanding what you do. And then the sales side that follows that up afterwards is you're coming in there and it's getting your follow-up right, getting the conversations right, and moving it through your process, through and your customers in your pipeline at the right speed, at the right time, to ensure that you're converting as many as possible. Because a lot of people invest a lot of money in marketing and then they don't follow up. They follow because they're scared of it. And there's no point generating all them leads and spending that money if you're not going to, get the follow-up right and have them right conversations.
It's kind of only half the plan, isn't it? I think we've sort of grown up in this kind of world where people think they can stick a load of social media posts up and sell some stuff. But yeah, okay, for some industries you might be able to do that and you'll sell some stuff, but actually just selling some stuff, there's no sustainability in that. Is that there's no follow through in it, there's no relationship built, there's none of that stuff that needed to kind of go on to create that ongoing process, particularly if you've got more than one thing to sell.
Massively. You talk about relationships there. Relationships is key to it. That is the fundamentals of sales has never changed in decades.
No.
The fundamentals are there, and people have a tendency, as you say, social media, it said, the world we're in, they wait for it to come to them. One of the statements that I hear a lot is, we're reactive at the moment, I want to be proactive, because people are waiting for it to come to them, and they're not doing that proactive step of building them relationships, that rapport, that trust. That is massively key to moving to that next level to convert them sales. You need to build that relationship with your customers, with your clients, whatever it might be. It's them relationships need to be there.
I'm gonna hazard a guess here that the kind of stuff that you hear people say quite a lot is probably, I don't like sales. I'm not very good at sales. And they're the barriers that I guess quite a lot of people will put up. I guess where I'm going with this is this idea of, look, can anyone do it? Can anyone be good at sales? And I'm gonna make an assumption that your answer to that is probably going to be yes. In which case, and correct me if I'm wrong, but in which case, how do you find the thing to tap in within someone to change their mindset on that? Because we think about sales, don't we, from a business point of view, but like, we're selling stuff all the time, aren't we? Like, if you're married, you've sold yourself to someone at some point, not literally.
Hopefully not.
Unless maybe you've got a certain agreement. That's your business. But like, all the time, like, we're selling stuff, aren't we? We're selling ourselves. We're selling is just a part of everyday life all the time. But we see a difference between that and now I've actually got to go out and sell this product or sell this service. Oh, I can't do that. How do you change people's mindset?
Yeah, I totally understand what you're saying there. So if I'm going out with lads for a night, or especially even if it's a weekend, then I've got to negotiate with my wife and and sell that to her constantly. But there were two points that you mentioned there around, can anybody sell? Yes, but it depends on the environment they're in. So there is sales environments out there that are very fast-paced on it, cold call centres, for example. That doesn't suit everybody's personalities. At Sales Geek, we do a lot of personality profiling as well, and you can, there's certain types of personalities that are successful in certain areas of there. But so I can use an example that I've recently had with a client who we was on a first call with a potential customer, so a prospect we were at, and he was so tensed up and worried about the call before we even got on it. So we sat down and spoke about it, and I was just like, right, tell me why. And he was just like, well, it's a massive opportunity. It's this, it's that, and I've got to go sell and I've got to do this and I don't want to get it all wrong and the rest of it. And I just said, right, where are you in your process with it? So we'd already worked on this and thought, right, we're right at the start. So awareness, there's numbers of different names you can give it. It's awareness. So it says, right, so it's just a conversation.
Yeah.
He says, you are not on that call. Your objective of that call is to have another conversation that maybe take it on to another level. At this point, you just awareness. So one, they're aware of what you do, but also you're aware of them. You know, the one thing I say to people is curiosity. We do a massive amount of our teachings that are around questioning, the right type of questioning, gaining all that information you need from your client, rather than it just becoming a pitch all about, you know, one of the biggest mistakes people make is they talk about I did this, we did this, rather than finding out what actually your prospective customer actually needs. Or if there's a need, if there isn't a need there, it's just a conversation. It's that simple. So changing that mindset before you go on the call, you know, or meeting, or whatever it may be, you align then your conversations, your outreach, depending on where you are. If it's awareness, it's purely a conversation. And from that then, from this particular situation, he settled down and he came off the call absolutely loving it. Because he'd just been asking a lot of questions to the point of almost out of an hour meeting, 50 minutes of it was just the customer talking, and it was just prompting open questions, getting them to where they wanted to be. And she actually went, actually, I'm not really sure what you do. So she started asking us questions then, and all we did then, we aligned our responses in line with what she was saying. So it was like, yeah, we definitely need to continue this, and to bring in one of the decision makers into the next conversation. He came off that call absolutely, you know, bouncing off walls. They were absolutely loving it. But just changing that mindset of the micro commitments is after, rather than thinking you've got to get on a call and you've got to sell instantly. Because if you're doing that, so if you're trying to sell on that call, but your buyer is at the awareness stage, you've lost them.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, actually. And this is kind of a little bit of a journey I went on when I first started the growth community, which was that I wanted to have this culture of not selling. You know, it was really important to me because the networking industry had become such a place of you just go to a networking meeting and are sold to. It was so important for me at the time to have this culture of not selling, which actually caused me quite a lot of problems to begin with, because I couldn't find my place in it, thinking, well, I've got to sell because I am a business and I've got to sell something. But I was so stuck in this, I must not be seen to sell, that it caused me quite a lot of issues to get my mind where it needed to be. And that was exactly it for me. Once I kind of understood that I wasn't selling, I was having a conversation, and getting the word selling out of my head and just focusing on that, I'm having a conversation, was really good for me, because I realised that actually that's all I'd ever done. That is how I sell. I have a conversation. I am interested in people, like you say. That curiosity is there. You've got to, make sure they've got enough time. I think we are notoriously bad at listening. Mm-hmm. So having the opportunity to actually, like you say, open questions, find out a bit about people. The sales process will kind of naturally happen because you're having a conversation, and that was a bit of a turning point for me, because when I got that, I started selling. It made such a difference to me to realise that I just had to be me.
And that's because you're building that rapport, that trust, and they want to be part of what you're doing. Then it's you they're buying into it. It's not just you're trying to push something onto them. It's you they're part of. So you mentioned there that conversation part of it. There's a lot of people who feel like they need this script in front of them and they need all these objectives. We've got to get through them all. And then listening is so much a massive part of that questioning. It's ridiculous. And we class it as active listening in what we do, because some people listen, but they're listening just for a gap.
Yeah.
So they can talk about what they want to talk about and ask the next question without actually engaging in that conversation about what the prospect, the customer's talking about. And if you engage in there and there's a number of different ways of doing it, then what you want to find out will just come out in conversation. That is the way that it works. And yes, you can have your objectives and key points you want, but you'll probably get 80% of them purely from that right conversational tone and listening. It's massively key. It's as important as questioning and everything else that goes on.
Yeah, and I suppose there's another really important point there is you need to be really clear on what it is you actually do and what it is you actually are selling, because if you kind of live and breathe it, people are naturally going to be much more drawn into it, aren't they, rather than it feeling like a separate entity almost. So I suppose there's an element of that. If you're a small business, you probably are quite passionate about what you do, and you probably are very good at what you do. So actually, you've probably got an advantage in some ways over somebody who's just selling for a company, because you've got a more emotional kind of involvement with that, I suppose. Can that be a good thing or a bad thing?
A good thing. Emotional, people buy on emotions.
Yes.
that is what they buy on. You know, at Sales Geek, we do a lot on the psychology of selling and the way the mind works and the way people work, you know. So to be able to, yes, you've got your value of your product and what it does, the features, and then you've got the benefits. But what you've also got then is the benefits, that personal value to an individual. What's it mean to them? What difference does it make to them, you know, on that level? And once you've got to that level with them, it makes a massive difference to the conversation, but also, you know, getting that person to buy into what you're, whether it's a service or a product, and what it means to them individually is massively key, whether that's, if it's a consumer, what it does for them, but also in a business. You know, what's it mean to them in the business, as in it may grow their stature in the business to the bottom. You know, there's a number of different things you can work on in that, but that emotional level is massively key.
We through the process of doing this podcast, we've built like an avatar of a guy called Steve, who is he's a relatively new business owner. He was in a job, he was good at what he did, he's kind of set up by himself. He's still at the stage of being a one-man band, but he's got plans for expansion and stuff like that. So I'm going to use Steve here, because what we've touched on a couple of things so far. So we've touched on this idea of talking about yourself too much, I, me, and stuff like that. Touched on the thing about, you know, kind of listening and the importance of that. So I'm gonna kind of group those together as perhaps common mistakes. What other mistakes is Steve probably going to be making? What other things is Steve likely to be getting wrong when it comes to sales?
So one thing I hear quite often when I first sit down with people and they ask the question, right, who's your customer? Quite a lot of response to, well, everybody's my customer.
Yeah.
And it's massively...
Same in networking.
Yeah. And it is, everybody's my customer, everybody's my, you know, prospective customer. And then when you break it down and you start talking to them, okay, how are you reaching that, you know, that audience that's everybody? And then it becomes this massive open world that actually it's that big, they're actually doing very little because they can't focus anywhere, so they're not really sure what they're doing, and they're throwing things out there, spending money often at times that they're getting no value for because it's in the wrong areas. You know, and they're just they're throwing out this net and hopefully somebody somewhere will bite. And it's a massive mistake because people get really stressed out about this big audience. You know, even the massive companies out there, you know, when they're doing marketing campaigns, they're doing it to a certain demographic.
Yeah.
You know, they can't hit everybody. So one of the things that he needs to do is making sure that he knows exactly, you know, his focus area, where he wants to concentrate, and that's where he puts his effort, you know, his investment, his budget, whatever he's got, he goes into that area, find out where they play, you know, is it on LinkedIn, is it on Facebook, is it network events, is it business, you know, whatever it may be, and then make sure that everything he does is aligned to there, and that's where, you know, Steve is present continuously, so that awareness is happening in the background. So as part of his campaign, so when he does eventually do that proactive side, whether it's approaching somebody at a network event or potentially connecting with somebody on LinkedIn, there's a good chance they're already aware because he's been feeding that particular channel rather than trying to feed everything that just don't work, you know, and he's talking about the gains that they can gain from working with him, or his pain relievers for their pain points.
Yeah.
Is hitting the right points with them in his message that's going out there.
And that doesn't necessarily have to just be vertical and horizontal industries. It can be just people who share your value system, the kind of people you want to work with, isn't it? And I think sometimes people get so hung up on, we've got to work with dentists or we've got to work with, whatever it is. They're so focused on those vertical and horizontal industries sometimes they forget actually your ideal customer is the person you like working with. And that's a really important point, I think.
Definitely. You can't underestimate that. The ethics and values, it's I'm a massive believer in building things on people and culture within a business.
Yeah.
You get the buy-in, you get everything in right, and the values that are in there, the buy-in of what you're doing, they're going to perform 10 times better, the rest of it. And understanding that and then values in who you're working with massively, it's a massive part of it. And it all comes down to that trust and rapport again. If they've got the same values as you and the ethics as you, the rapport is going to build and the trust is going to be there pretty early on in the way that you work.
I think another thing is that, obviously you need to be really clear on who you want to sell to. You need to be really clear on how you're going to do that. But something really simple that I think sometimes gets forgotten, and I know I wasn't doing it, and it has made a big difference to me, was having a pipeline. And people think you've got to have a big fancy CRM system and all that kind of stuff. And yes, I suspect in some businesses you do. What would you say is the simplest way to just get started with a pipeline, and how important do you think it is?
So one thing I just want to clarify here as well, there's a number of different phrases thrown about the sales funnel, the sales process, and there's a sales pipeline. And the sales funnel is the buyer's journey as they're going through. That's where they're going. Your sales process is the stages that they're going through of your business. And then your pipeline is your customers. So it's that pipeline that runs through them stages of your process. So it's the customers that are running through it. Key to that is having them stages in place. Now, if there's complex versions, there's simple versions, and there's something called kickers at each stage. There's other ways of making it up, but before you move it on to the next stage. And what this does, this supports the conversations we were having earlier about whatever stage them customers are at or prospects are at, that's the type of conversation you're having. So as you're working them through your pipeline, you know the stage you're at, and then micro commitments to move them on to the next stage as you move them through the lead part all the way through to the opportunity part of the process. It's massively key, but also understanding your numbers behind that within your pipeline, so you know what you're doing today is affecting that long-term number of where you want to be. Just having a random plan is not going to often, you may get really lucky, but it'll be it's very rare that happens. It's understanding how many, conversations you need, how many leads you need to bring in, how many proposals you need to be doing that need to be going. All them numbers then will show you the number of potential prospects you need to be bringing into that pipeline.
Yeah, and I think as well, just from from that sort of success point of view, if you're talking to lots of different people, if you don't really know where you're at with all those people, you don't really know whether you're anywhere near achieving it or whether you are, you bang on it. You could be doing a whole load of work that you don't need to because you've got a load of people waiting to sign, hand the credit card over, or you might have like loads of people who are nowhere near. So I think it's quite, it doesn't have to be that. I mean, I use a Trello board for mine. It's really simple. Everything about my business is simple, but it works for me. And I always know where people are in the process. If they're ready to sign up, I know where they're on that column. If they're not ready to sign up yet, but they're making the right noises, I know where they are. And it just means that I've got a really clear idea of how many people are coming through that process and whether I'm going to hit my monthly target or not. And it isn't any more complicated than that, mine, but it's so empowering actually. And it was a big deal to me when I kind of got that right, because it just allowed me to relax into the process a bit more rather than feeling overwhelmed and not really knowing what the hell was going on.
Yeah, because you've just got a load of names and where you are the rest of it otherwise, rather than a set structure. And one thing that you put in there as well is timings. How long does it take them to go through each stage? You can work it out in your business, because then you can see if something's taking longer than it should do, so you can address it there and then. Some people have pipelines with people that have been in there for months and they haven't even spoken. They haven't been in touch.
No.
They may have been ghosted, etc. But they still have them in the pipeline rather than just make it either removing them or finding out what's actually going on with them. They're still, and them numbers then, especially if they've got forecasts coming out of it, they can not give a true reflection of what's happening in the business.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. Yeah, I do try. I do that. I'm constantly moving people. If they're not moving forward, I move them back all the time. So yeah, that's a really good point, actually, isn't it? To kind of really get a clear picture of what everything's doing.
There's one thing you mentioned there as well. One word is simple. It's got to be simple and it works for your business. Yes, if you're in a multi-million pound business with 60, 70 salespeople, it's going to get more complex, because of visibility, everything's there. But when it's a smaller business, it has to be simpler, because if you don't implement it, there's no point doing it. If you can't use it day to day, it's just there's no point putting that time and effort into it. So it has to be usable. That it's something that you run, that it becomes part of the heart of the business, and you're constantly doing it.
I want to come back to that simplicity thing in a minute. There's another question that I want to ask first, though. You and obviously Sales Geek, kind of your biggest thing is this sort of, I hope I'm phrasing this right, this kind of like fractional sales director role that you play.
Yeah.
What's the benefit in that then? What's the point in that for someone?
Okay, so the way that one thing that it makes it affordable for the businesses that normally wouldn't have a sales director in the business. It makes them affordable to have an experienced person in the business that knows that, but not just that one person. Sales Geek have got, I think it's over 700 years of experience now in the network of sales directors, MDs, CEOs, and you get access to them, as well. If they've been into various business just to help each other out on what's going on with them. We've all got different areas of expertise in different markets. We've all done different things. There's nothing we haven't seen within there. And what it does then, so you don't get the having to pay the salary of a sales director, which now, for a good one, you could be looking at 5 figures plus a month, plus all the on costs of the car, the private healthcare, etc., things like that. You can have one in from as little as a couple of hours, half a day a month, to a number of days, depending on your budget and how fast you want to accelerate that on. The other advantage as well is we work on a monthly retainer basis. So once we're in place in your business, we are your sales director. We may only be proactive in your business for half a day or a number of days, but we're available outside of that. Yes, there's a fairness policy, as obviously with it, but emails, calls, will still be holding the people of the business, the team, the business owners accountable for what needs to happen to move things on, through there as well. But they can also bounce ideas off us. Some of the geeks are just in businesses, almost like a non-exec director almost role, where they're just bouncing ideas off them monthly and asking the opinion and just sanity checking, because being a business owner can be a very lonely place.
Yeah, it can be. Yeah, very.
Yeah, and they need somebody just with that little bit of expertise just to bounce stuff off or offer different insights. One of the sayings I like to use is you can't see the label from inside the jar. People get that embedded in the day-to-day running of the business. They forget to work on the business.
Yeah. And I suppose having that kind of person in your business gives it a really cool and kind of strategic view of things, that because you can't be good at everything. It depends on what your background is. My background is marketing. So, but I still wouldn't necessarily call myself, a marketing strategist. So, having somebody who comes in who's got that knowledge at that much higher level is going to elevate everything you're doing out of being small business into more medium-sized business or whatever above, because you're getting the benefit of that, that really cool strategic kind of knowledge into your business without the big paycheck.
Yeah, the learnings that we give are massive, and the advantage of because we're all qualified sales trainers as well as going in and implementing the right structure in the business, whatever that may be for that business, we can also do the training at the side of it, so they're able to go out and execute it, so they've got the skill set to be able to, yes, we've got this ready, right, let's go do it, they can go and execute it. And one of the differences and one of the things I love about Sales Geek is, as a minimum, everybody that is part of Sales Geek has got 10 years experience as a sales director. They've been there, they've done it, they've walked the walk, they've got the T-shirt, and that makes a massive part in what we're doing, and being able to be flexible in where we are. And we go in and we get it done. That is the one thing that we get associated, we get called coaches, which I understand, and we do that at times because people need to get upskilled and do what they're doing. But a lot of the times we've been there, we've done it, we'll build it with you. We'll do it, we'll get hands-on, and we'll make sure it happens. That's key to it, is that it will happen.
Love that.
Yeah.
I said I was going to come back to simplicity. The reason I've kind of left this to the end is because we always end the podcasts by asking for some homework for people that go, right, okay, this is something that I want to follow up, I want to do something with. We call it homework. It's just basically kind of like, what should someone do next? I've waited because I think what I'm going to ask kind of crosses over into that anyway. So when we talk about simplicity, I would say, look at it from the other point of view. It's quite a noisy space, isn't it, sales? You've got a lot of people saying, you should do this, you should do the other. If you think, I'm going to go and read a book about sales, you've got hundreds, probably thousands to pick from. And all these people going, but my way is the best way. So I'm going to go back to Steve and think, for Steve who thinks, I need to do better on my sales, and looks at kind of the advice and stuff that's out there and just goes, it's just all a bit overwhelming, just a lot of noise, a lot of people shouting, hey, do it my way, I'm the best. What's the starting point? Where does someone start? That person, be it Steve or whoever, that kind of goes, look, I'm at point A with my sales, and I'm maybe doing 1% of what I could be doing, but I just feel overwhelmed when I think about what do I do next, because there's everyone shouting different messages and all sorts at you. What's the starting point? What's the next thing that someone should do?
First and foremost, we talk about it right at the start, is don't fear sales. Understand your personality as well. Understand your why. You know, why are you in this? Why are you doing it? And then also understand where you want to get to. That's key to it. And write them down. You know, a lot of people have goals going around in their head, and they've got the rest of it. Write it down, put it down on paper, and hold yourself accountable across that timeline to go do it. You know, and keep on revisiting it regular, and make sure you're doing that as well. You know, that's where you want to be. This is where you are now, and then build that plan out to do it. Top of the list, you know, I mentioned earlier as well, is know your target audience. Understand who you're selling to and where you're going. That's key for it. Otherwise, you're just going to become a busy fool. You're going to be doing a lot of things that are irrelevant, and especially when you're your own business owner and money can be tight early on and the rest of it, your time, your efforts, they have to be in the right areas, talking to the right people.
And is it worth actually looking at who you've already sold to and working out who they are and working out if they are the right kind of people? Because, you know, sometimes, certainly in the early part of business, you just sell to everybody. Anyone who buys something, you do it. Whereas within about a year to 2 years down the line, you start to work out who you like working with. So I suppose that's quite a good way to identify who your target audience is by who you're already enjoying working with. Yeah.
If you've got that information behind you and you've been going for that short period, you will have a top 10, top 15, maybe top 20, depending on the type of business you are. Review them, look at the size of the business, the industry, the areas where they're at, and look at where you've been successful. And like you said, do enjoy working with them, because there's a reason you've been more successful in that area as well. So what did you do so good with them customers? Why did they come to you? Why did they start working with you? Well, you know what? Let's go do more of that.
Yeah. Where did they come from? That's another really good question, I always think.
Yeah. You know, go do more of it and have a look at the places where you've lost. Why have you lost? You know, learn lessons, and either, you know, if you're going to fail quick in certain areas, move on to the stuff that can work. You know, one of the key things in sales is people, they keep going and going and going because they feel they've put a little bit of time, you know, they put some time into it. I've got to do something with this. Where that sometimes it's better just to go, you know what, draw a line under it. Let's move on to something else when the time's going to be better.
You can't sell to, you can't and shouldn't, I suppose, sell to everyone.
No,
you just can't, and you won't. And sometimes it's just not the right time either. I think I always, when people say no, I always add yet in my mind, because that takes the sting out of it. Yeah. The next point of that as well is understand what value you bring to your customer. One of the mistakes that a lot of people make is that they do that internally. They sit down and they'll try work it out themselves. If you've already got clients, existing people in place that you're dealing with, and past ones, engage with them and ask them, you know, why have you bought from? You know, what's so special about working with me, with our company? You know, that information from the outside looking in can be very different to that view internally. You know your proposition, you know what you're going out there, and you know why people are buying from you. That's key in the message that you're putting out there.
Are we classifying that as your homework, or is there anything else that you want to set for people?
Once you have that in place, so you've got your target audience, you know your proposition, you know where they play, go do it. Be brave. It's one of the things that you have to do. Understand yourself. It's about relationships initially. It's just conversations. That is all it is about. Whether it's, you know, whether that's over LinkedIn, whether it's network events, just one point on LinkedIn, it's there to entertain, to engage, to inspire, you know, to educate. It's not there to sell. Once you get to that level of conversation, take it off LinkedIn.
Yeah.
You know, get them to a one-to-one or whatever it is, take it off there, because then you just become one of the many people, like I get spammed with LinkedIn companies left, right and centre every day. But once you know that tactic, you've got to just go do it. Number one rule, the more people you talk to, the more people will be aware of you, the more people you put into the pipeline, the more people that'll, you know, you'll be proposing to, and the more people you'll sell to. It's that simple.
Fair enough.
Excellent.
If anyone wants to find out more about you, or perhaps find out more about Sales Geek and what you might be able to do for them, what's the best way for them to do that? Check out
salesgeek.co.uk. A number of things on there. We've also got a full online training module on there that's just been launched, the Sales Geek Academy, which is an amazing tool as well. Or they can contact me direct message me through LinkedIn, or my email address is hayden.fox@salesgeek.co.uk. So just drop me a line, or I love talking. So my phone number is 07532 775 937. I always prefer a conversation rather than a message.
I think that's the first person that's given out their personal mobile phone number on the podcast. So that's a first. You've set a trend. Hayden, it's been brilliant chatting. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for your attendance today. I hope you've learned something new. Every day is a business school day after all. If you'd like to contact us or perhaps put yourself forward as a future guest, find either Nikki or myself on LinkedIn, or you can drop us a line using the links in the show notes. Right, school is out. Please wait for the bell before you leave.